It is day 100 since the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, and the FBI has found serious revelations.
Nancy Guthrie's case may be moving into a phase where one quiet piece of evidence could matter more than every rumor that has surrounded this. Investigation, not a confession, not an arrest, not a dramatic press conference, but something far more forensic: a vehicle, a route, a trace, a camera angle, a detail so small that most people would overlook it, but investigators would not. Because in a case like Nancy Guthrie's, the truth may not be hiding in one loud moment, it may be hiding in movement. Where someone went, how they got there, what they used, what they touched, what they carried, and what they thought no one would ever find. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old when she disappeared from her home near Tucson, Arizona. According to the source story, investigators believe she was taken against her will sometime between the night of January 31st and the early hours of February 1st, 2026. The original script also describes the case as involving a masked person near the home, blood on the porch, signs of intrusion, and a belief that Nancy may have been specifically targeted. That word, targeted, changes the entire feeling of the case. Because if Nancy was targeted, then this was not just a random moment. It was not simply confusion. It was not an elderly woman quietly wandering away into the dark. Targeted means someone may have chosen her, someone may have watched, someone may have planned. And once planning enters a missing person case, investigators stop looking only at what happened inside the house. They start looking at what happened before the house, what happened around the house, what happened after someone left the house, and most importantly, how someone may have moved away from that scene. That is where a vehicle becomes critical. A car is not just transportation. In a criminal investigation, a car can become a container of memory. It can hold fibers, hair, soil, skin cells, blood traces, plant material, dust, carpet residue, touch DNA. A vehicle can carry evidence in places people forget exist: under seats, inside door seams, along seat rails, beneath floor mats, inside the trunk liner, around handles, on the steering wheel, near seat belts, and deep inside fabric. A person may clean the surface, but a car has hidden spaces, and hidden spaces often remember what people try to erase. That is why the vehicle angle in Nancy Guthrie's case feels so important. Because if Nancy was taken from her home, then someone or something had to move her. She did not simply disappear into the air. There had to be direction. There had to be movement. There had to be a route. And if a vehicle was involved, investigators would want to know one thing above all: did that vehicle preserve the truth? The house is the beginning, but the vehicle may be the bridge. The house shows where the event started. The vehicle may show where it went next. And in a case where investigators are trying to rebuild the timeline minute by minute, that bridge could become one of the most important pieces of evidence. Think about how detectives would approach it. They would not simply open the car door and look around. They would preserve it, photograph it, document the condition of the seats, the floorboards, the trunk, the console, the passenger side, the driver's side, the door handles, the pedals, the mats, the storage spaces. They would ask whether the vehicle had been cleaned recently, whether anything smelled unusual, whether there were fresh stains, whether there was mud or soil that did not belong, whether the seat positions made sense, whether the mileage matched the story being told, whether GPS data, phone data, traffic cameras, or home surveillance could place that vehicle near Nancy's home or away from it. And that is where a case begins to tighten. Because a statement can be emotional, a rumor can be loud, but a vehicle can be tested. And once evidence is tested, the story either survives or it begins to collapse. That is why this part of the Nancy Guthrie case is so unsettling. The public may focus on names, the internet may focus on theories, but investigators focus on connections. Does a vehicle connect to the home? Does it connect to a route? Does it connect to a timeline? Does it connect to surveillance? Does it connect to trace evidence? Does it connect to something Nancy wore, touched, or carried? Does it connect to a person who has already spoken to investigators? And does it explain what happened after she was taken? Those questions matter more than speculation. Because in an investigation like this, a vehicle can do two powerful things. It can strengthen a theory, or it can destroy one. If evidence inside a vehicle matches the scene, that becomes serious. If a timeline places the vehicle where it should not have been, that becomes serious. If trace material inside the car connects back to Nancy's home, that becomes serious. But if the vehicle shows no meaningful connection, that matters too. It can rule someone out, it can redirect investigators, it can expose online theories as empty. And that is why responsible coverage has to be careful. Because people online often move faster than evidence. They point fingers, they build stories, they accuse. But law enforcement has to prove. That difference is everything. Suspicion asks, who feels guilty? Evidence asks, what can be proven? Suspicion spreads quickly. Evidence moves slowly. Suspicion makes noise. Evidence builds pressure. And in Nancy Guthrie's case, pressure may be building around movement. The movement from the home, the movement near the neighborhood, the movement captured or missed by cameras, the movement of a possible vehicle, the movement that could explain how an 84-year-old woman was taken from a place where she should have been safe. The original story points to several disturbing investigative elements: a masked person, blood at the porch, mixed DNA, possible internet disruptions, surveillance requests, and vehicle-related leads. Each piece may mean something. But the question is whether they belong to the same chain. A masked person near the door may suggest preparation. Blood may suggest violence or injury. Internet disruption may suggest timing or interference. Surveillance requests may suggest investigators are looking beyond the exact night of the disappearance. Vehicle leads may suggest movement away from the scene. When all of those details are placed together, the case stops looking random. It starts looking structured. And structured cases are terrifying because structure suggests someone may have thought ahead. Someone may have known the neighborhood. Someone may have understood the cameras. Someone may have chosen a time when the area was quiet. Someone may have known how to get in. And someone may have known how to get out. That is why investigators asking for camera footage from surrounding homes is so important. They are not only asking what happened in the moment Nancy disappeared. They may also be asking what happened before. Was there a vehicle seen days earlier? Was someone watching the home? Did the same car pass more than once? Was there a pattern? Did someone approach the area before the night Nancy vanished? Did they test the route? Did they look for cameras? Did they study when lights went off? Did they wait for the right window? Those questions are not dramatic, they are practical. And practical questions solve cases. Because planning leaves patterns, and patterns often travel on wheels. A vehicle can show preparation. A vehicle can show escape. A vehicle can show contact. A vehicle can show panic. A vehicle can show concealment. A vehicle can show distance. And in a case where Nancy may have been taken from her home, distance matters. Because if she was moved, then the route becomes part of the crime. Every turn matters, every traffic camera matters, every neighbor's camera matters, every timestamp matters, every gap matters. A car seen too early could show planning. A car seen too late could show return. A car moving fast could show urgency. A car without lights could show concealment. A car outside the known search area could change the entire map. That is how a vehicle stops being ordinary. It becomes a timeline container. It becomes a witness, a silent one. But sometimes, the silent witness is the one that tells the truth most clearly. The public often wants the big reveal. They want the detective to announce the suspect. They want the case solved in one moment. But real investigations do not usually work that way. They narrow, slowly, painfully, piece by piece. A camera angle confirms one movement. A phone record confirms one location. A vehicle lead confirms one route. A lab result confirms one trace. A statement fails against one timestamp, and suddenly, what looked like a wide-open mystery becomes a focused investigation. That may be where the Nancy Guthrie case is heading. Not finished, not solved, but narrower. And when a case narrows, pressure increases. Pressure on statements, pressure on timelines, pressure on anyone who had access. Pressure on anyone whose vehicle, phone, or movements do not line up. Pressure on every detail that still cannot be explained. That is why this stage of the case matters. Because investigators may already know more than the public knows. They may already have a route they are testing, a vehicle they are comparing, a timeline they are tightening, a piece of evidence that has not been released, a detail they are holding back because the person responsible may not know they have it. That is common in serious investigations. Detectives do not reveal everything. They protect information. They let people talk. They let statements stand. Then they compare those statements to evidence. The deeper investigators move into Nancy Guthrie's case, the more the focus seems to shift from the obvious question to the hidden one. The obvious question is, who took Nancy? But the hidden question may be more important. How did they move her without leaving a trail they could not explain? Because once investigators believe a person was taken against their will, the case becomes more than a missing person investigation. It becomes a reconstruction of the home, a reconstruction of the route, a reconstruction of the timing, a reconstruction of whoever came near that property before, during, and after Nancy disappeared. And that is why a vehicle matters so much. A vehicle can expose planning. A vehicle can expose panic. A vehicle can expose distance. A vehicle can expose a lie. Someone may clean a car. They may remove obvious items. They may wipe surfaces. They may throw things away. But forensic investigators are not looking only for what the eye can see. They are looking for what the person missed. A tiny fiber beneath a mat. A trace under a seat rail. a stain in the trunk liner, a strand of hair caught in fabric, soil that does not match the driver's usual location, touch DNA on an inside handle, a change in mileage, a route that does not match the story, a timestamp that puts the vehicle near the wrong place at the wrong time. That is how a car becomes more than a car. It becomes a record. And in Nancy Guthrie's case, the record matters because the original source describes a case involving movement, possible vehicle-related leads, surveillance review, blood evidence, mixed DNA, and a masked individual near her home. Those details are not small. They suggest investigators may be dealing with a case where the person responsible understood timing, access, and escape. That is what makes the vehicle angle so chilling, because the vehicle may not only show where someone went, it may show what they carried. And if Nancy was taken from her home, then investigators would want to know whether any vehicle connected to the timeline carried a trace of her. Not because one trace solves everything by itself, but because one trace can lock a timeline into place. And once a timeline locks into place, every statement connected to that timeline starts to face pressure. Where were you? What time did you leave? What route did you take? Why were you there? Why did your phone move that way? Why did your vehicle appear on camera? Why does your statement not match the movement? Why does the evidence say something different? Those are the questions that turn a person from a witness into someone investigators must examine more closely. And this is why law enforcement often keeps vehicle evidence quiet. They do not want the public guessing. They do not want suspects adjusting their stories. They do not want someone knowing exactly what was found. They may know a vehicle was seen. They may know a route was used. They may know a car moved faster than expected. They may know a camera captured something just outside the original search area. But they may not release it yet, because once that information becomes public, it loses some of its power. Investigators use hidden details to test people. They ask questions they already know the answer to. They let a person speak. They let the person commit to a version. Then they compare that version against evidence. That is how contradictions reveal themselves. A person may say they never went near a certain road. A camera may say otherwise. A person may say they stayed home. A phone ping may disagree. A person may say a car was not used. The car itself may tell a different story. That is why forensic vehicle analysis can become the turning point in a case like this. Not because it always gives a dramatic answer, but because it forces the truth into a smaller space. And when the truth becomes smaller, the investigation becomes stronger. At the beginning of a case, there are many possibilities. Maybe she left on her own. Maybe she was confused. Maybe someone helped her. Maybe someone took her. Maybe the person was known. Maybe the person was unknown. Maybe the movement was planned. Maybe it was improvised. But as evidence comes in, possibilities begin to disappear. A camera removes one theory. A phone record removes another. A DNA result changes the direction. A vehicle search confirms or eliminates a route. And slowly, the case becomes less about what could have happened and more about what still fits. That is the point investigators may be approaching. The stage where only certain explanations survive. And the vehicle may be one of the tools helping them get there. Because if a car was used in Nancy's disappearance, it could answer questions that no person wants to answer. Was Nancy placed inside? Was anyone else inside? Was the vehicle near the property before the disappearance? Did it return afterward? Was it cleaned? Was it driven unusually far? Was it captured by neighborhood cameras? Did the license plate appear anywhere? Did the headlights match footage? Did the body shape of the car match witness reports? Did it pass through a known intersection? Did it show up in footage investigators requested from residents? Every one of those questions can become a piece of the chain. And that chain matters because Nancy's case does not appear to be one single clue. It appears to be a collection of clues that investigators must connect. The porch, the masked figure, the blood, the mixed DNA, the possible disruptions, the surveillance requests, the vehicle-related leads, the route, the timing, the silence after she disappeared. Each detail alone may raise concern, but together they can form structure. And structure is what investigators look for. Because structure suggests a sequence. Someone arrived, someone approached, something happened at or near the home. Nancy was removed. A route was taken. Evidence was left behind. A vehicle may have carried the aftermath. And somewhere in that sequence, the person responsible may have made a mistake. That mistake does not have to be big. It only has to be consistent. A repeated vehicle. A route that makes sense only if someone knew the area. A camera that caught a moment the person thought was outside the search zone. A sample that should not be in the car. A statement that does not match the mileage. A detail too small to notice in the moment, but too important to ignore in the lab. That is how real cases turn. Not with noise, with consistency. The public often looks for the most dramatic clue. Investigators look for the clue that can survive testing. And if something inside a vehicle survives testing, that could explain why the case may feel like it is tightening. The source material says authorities believe they are getting closer, while also continuing to work vehicle-related leads, review surveillance, and avoid naming a public suspect. That combination says a lot. It suggests investigators may have direction, but they are not ready to show the whole map. They may know enough to move carefully, but not enough to speak carelessly. And that matters because once law enforcement makes a public accusation, they need evidence that can stand under pressure. Not online pressure, courtroom pressure. The kind of pressure where every detail is challenged, every sample is questioned, every camera angle is examined, every timestamp is tested, every witness is cross-examined, every assumption is attacked. That is why investigators do not rush. They build, they compare, they wait for labs, they protect the strongest details, and they let the evidence decide when the case is ready. That is difficult for the public to accept. It is even more difficult for the family. Because families want answers, they want action, they want someone held accountable, they want to know where their loved one is. They want to understand how an 84-year-old woman could vanish from her own home under such frightening circumstances. And while investigators work in silence, the family has to live inside uncertainty. That is the emotional weight at the center of this case. Behind every forensic detail is Nancy. Not a theory, not a headline, not a viral discussion. A woman, a retired teacher, a grandmother, an elderly person who should have been safe. That is why the case matters. And that is why the vehicle question matters too. Because if Nancy was taken, then she was not just removed from a home. She was moved through the world, across streets, past cameras, along roads, maybe past houses where people were sleeping, maybe past businesses with security systems, maybe through intersections with traffic cameras, maybe in a vehicle that someone believed would never be connected. But modern investigations are built to find connections. A camera from one house, a doorbell clip from another, a license plate reader, a gas station camera, a phone location record, a neighbor's memory, a lab result, a vehicle inspection, a road pattern. Together, these things can tell a story no one intended to tell. And that may be what investigators are doing now. They may be building a story from evidence, not from rumor, not from emotion, not from social media, from evidence. And evidence has a different rhythm. It is slower, colder, more exact. It does not care what people believe. It only cares what can be shown. That is why this stage of Nancy's case feels so serious. Because the questions are no longer broad. They are specific. Was someone watching Nancy's home before the disappearance? Was the masked person connected to a vehicle? Was the vehicle seen before that night? Was it seen after? Did it pass through the same area more than once? Was the internet disruption random? Or did it help someone avoid being seen? Did the blood evidence match the abduction theory? Did the mixed DNA identify one person, several people, or something more complicated? Did investigators find a route that connects the home to a later movement? Did a vehicle lead provide the first clear direction? And most importantly, does someone's story fail when placed beside the physical evidence? That is where cases break open, not when everyone agrees, but when one version of events cannot survive the facts. A person may explain away one problem, maybe even two, but when the vehicle, the timeline, the camera footage, and the forensic evidence all begin pointing in the same direction, the explanation becomes harder to hold. And that is when investigators know the case is changing. The person responsible may not know exactly how close law enforcement is. They may not know what camera caught them. They may not know what trace was recovered. They may not know which route investigators rebuilt. They may not know which vehicle detail mattered. But if investigators are closing in, the pressure becomes real. Because evidence does not forget. The road does not forget. The vehicle does not forget. And sometimes a person's biggest mistake is believing that silence can erase movement. It cannot. Movement leaves a trail, maybe not always one that is easy to see, but one that can be found. And in Nancy Guthrie's case, that trail may be the key. Maybe the answer is in surveillance. Maybe it is in the vehicle. Maybe it is in DNA. Maybe it is in a route investigators have not made public. Maybe it is in a single inconsistency between what someone said and what the evidence shows. But whatever the final answer is, it will need to be strong enough to survive scrutiny. Because Nancy deserves more than suspicion. She deserves proof. She deserves the truth. And her family deserves answers that are not built on rumor, but on facts. That is why we have to be careful. It is easy to take one detail and build a complete story around it. It is easy to turn a vehicle lead into an accusation. It is easy to turn silence into guilt, but real justice requires more. It requires evidence. It requires confirmation. It requires patience. It requires investigators to separate what feels suspicious from what can actually be proven. And that may be exactly what is happening behind the scenes. The public sees pieces. Law enforcement sees patterns. The public hears rumors. Investigators compare evidence. The public asks who. Investigators ask how, when, where, and with what proof. And in the Nancy Guthrie case, one of the most important proofs may be tied to movement: a car, a route, a camera, a trace, a timing gap, a detail that was there from the beginning, waiting to be understood. That is the haunting part. The answer may not be new. It may already have been collected, already photographed, already logged, already sent to a lab, already compared against another piece of the timeline. The breakthrough may not come from something found tomorrow. It may come from something investigators already have. A detail that finally connects, a sample that finally returns, a route that finally matches, a vehicle that finally makes sense inside the timeline. And when that happens, the case can move very quickly. Because once the evidence aligns, investigators no longer have to chase every possibility. They can follow the one that remains. For Nancy Guthrie, that is what everyone is waiting for. The moment the uncertainty begins to narrow into truth. The moment the family receives something stronger than speculation. The moment investigators can say not only what they believe happened, but what they can prove happened. Until then, the case remains active. The questions remain open. And the vehicle angle remains one of the most important pieces to watch. Because if Nancy was taken from her home, someone had to move her. And if someone moved her, then somewhere, somehow, that movement may have left evidence behind. Maybe in a camera frame, maybe in a tire path, maybe in a seat fiber, maybe in a trunk seam, maybe in a timestamp, maybe in a route that was never supposed to be noticed. That is why this case continues to grip people. It feels like the truth is not gone. It feels like the truth is close. Incomplete but close. Hidden but not destroyed. Quiet but not silent. And in investigations like this, silence does not mean nothing is happening. Sometimes silence means investigators are protecting the piece that matters most. So as we wait, the responsible question is not who can we blame today. The responsible question is what evidence will survive tomorrow. Because that evidence is what will matter. Not the loudest theory, not the most viral claim, not the most emotional accusation. The evidence that connects, the evidence that eliminates, the evidence that proves. And if a vehicle connected to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance carries even one piece of that proof, then it may become the turning point investigators have been quietly building toward all along. If you have credible information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, contact law enforcement immediately. You can call the FBI tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI, that is 1-800-225-5324, or submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. If an official reward is being offered, credible information that helps investigators may qualify under the terms set by law enforcement or the family. Always confirm reward details through official sources.